Once when I was in the 11th grade, I threw a birthday party and Ellen, my neighbor, was coming over. Most importantly of all though, tonight I was going to tell Ellen about my feelings for her. But just before she was due to arrive, she gave me a call and said, "Luce, I'm going out with Brian tonight. Do you mind covering for me? I told my mom that I'd be spending the night with you." I rushed to my window just in time to see Brian kiss Ellen before they got into his car and left. This was just a week after I told her I thought Brian was cute. Hi, my name is Lucy, and this is my story. Anyway, when Ellen's mom called later that evening and asked to speak to her, I said I hadn't the slightest idea where she was. That night, I heard Ellen's mom yelling at her when she got home. For once, she was getting what she deserved. The next day, she came over and apologized for putting me in an awkward position. Then, she pulled a brand new box of AirPods from her bag and gave them to me. "I know you've always wanted these, but they're too expensive for you, so here you go." I said, "Get off your high horse, Ellen. Stop showing off your money all the freaking time. Is that all that matters to you? You make me sick." I was so mad at Ellen that I didn't know what to do. So I decided the best person to get advice from was our school guidance counselor. After listening to everything, she said she had something serious to discuss with me. She said, "Ellen was just in here." She said that Ellen had said something crazy, and since she knew about my feelings for Ellen, she had decided to tell me. She said, "You have to promise never to repeat what I'm about to say." Then she told me the craziest, most unimaginable thing. She said Ellen had told her we were half-sisters. Apparently, Ellen's dad was also my dad. Just last week, she had overheard him say to my mom that I was his responsibility too, and he had to keep taking care of me. I was beyond horrified. This was too much. Not only was my crush my half-sister, but my dad had also left me to live in misery while she got everything? And I'd lived without a dad my whole life. I was done with this. I needed payback. I started with small things. I cut the string on a tin can phone line we had made when we were kids. It went between our bedroom windows. She always said it was a symbol of our friendship. Well, no more. Ellen called me immediately and asked why I had cut the line. Instead of answering, I asked her about her boyfriend, Brian. She just said goodbye politely and then didn't speak to me for a few days. A week later, she called me and said in her stupid goody-goody voice, "It's no big deal. We're growing up, and yeah, Brian is fine. It's nothing serious. We're just friends." I could have screamed with rage now. The next day, I decided to up my game. Ellen was hard of hearing and needed to feel what I was feeling. Ellen loved to listen to my music. So, I wrote a song just for her. I opened my window and started screeching. "Ellen is the worst, the worst, the worst, the worst. She looks like fuzzy lumpkins, has cheese like bloated pumpkins. Her breath smells bad, she's borderline mad. Ellen is the worst, the worst, the worst, the worst." A few minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to see a very upset Ellen. I asked, "What's up, Elle?" She said, "You're singing about me, and loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear." I smiled at her. "I thought you'd appreciate me writing a song just for you. Consider this a small repayment for how good a friend you've been." She didn't know what to say to that. It felt so good to finally get to her that I decided to amp it up. I shared the song on Facebook. The video was removed a few hours later, and I was banned from Facebook for bullying. Brian came rushing over to Ellen's. He went inside and consoled her. I looked out from my window that night and was shocked to see Ellen and Brian kissing in her backyard. Ellen saw me looking, and I slammed the window. This was all wrong. To make it all worse, at dinner, Mom said to me, "What was that horrible song you were singing? You and Ellen are like sisters. Don't be so mean to her." I was so mad when I heard that. I yelled, "She's not my sister. I don't care what you or her dad say." A month later, there were rumors going around school that some college scholarship scouts were coming to watch the final hockey game of the season. Ellen was the star of the hockey team, but I was going to make sure that the scouts never got a chance to see Ellen. The morning before her big game, I snuck into her garage and stole her goalie kit. Ellen showed up late for the game. Her coach didn't let her play, and the team had their biggest loss of the season. Best of all, the scouts never saw Ellen. If she wanted to get into college, she'd have to get her dad to pay for it. When Ellen got back, I was waiting for her in her driveway. She looked at me in surprise and asked, "Where did you get that?" I said, "Hey, Elle, it looked like a pretty fun sport, so I borrowed your stuff to give it a try." Looking at her face, I knew that she was finally going to explode. It was the moment I'd been waiting for. We'd finally put an end to this friendship and would have the biggest fight of our lives. She would finally tell me that I was the worst friend ever, and I could tell her she was a backstabbing, heartbreaking pain in the butt. But instead, Ellen took a deep breath, nodded, and then went inside. I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. To make matters worse, Brian visited her more and more regularly now. Then she came over one day and said, "I want to apologize for being selfish. I'm glad that you want to play hockey." She pulled out a brand new hockey kit and handed it to me. "Now we can play together. What do you think?" I shut the door in her face. She'd done it again. For the next month, I was miserable. Ellen tried to call me, but she was the last person I wanted to speak to. Over time, she found new friends. But I wasn't going to let her off that easy. My life was going nowhere and hers was perfect. I had another idea. Monica, the leader of the group of girls Ellen was hanging out with, was super insecure about her boyfriend. All it took was an anonymous message and a quickly photoshopped picture sent to Monica, telling her to watch out for Ellen. Monica did the rest. The next day, I watched as Ellen went to greet her friends, and they completely ignored her. Monica even posted on the class WhatsApp group. The message said, "Ellen is a boyfriend stealer. Be careful, girls." Finally, Ellen broke down. But rushing in to her rescue was Brian. He told her that everything was going to be okay. Damn it! I couldn't believe it. Every one of my plans seemed to backfire. Every single time. I felt like I had no energy left. I made a decision right there. I was done with Ellen. 6 months went by. We didn't speak. It hurt to be betrayed by her, but I didn't have the energy to fight it. And then one day, Ellen was at my door with a plate of brownies. "I miss you, Lou," she told me. "Can we talk?" "How's Brian?" I asked. She took a deep breath and choked back her tears. "He doesn't go out of his way to hurt me, which is more than I can say for you." I had finally made Ellen feel as hurt as I was, but I didn't feel happy. I just wanted to tell her how I felt, about my 16th birthday and all the times she let me down, but I didn't. A week later, Ellen and her family moved away. I started college, but I always kept tabs on Ellen from afar. She went off to college to become a lawyer. Now that she was gone, I missed her like crazy. One day when I got back from college, I saw Mom had a visitor, Ellen's dad. Seeing him, I snapped. I demanded to know why he was here, and before he could say anything, I said, "I don't care about you. You're no dad to me." Mom jumped to her feet and asked me what I meant. I told her what I had kept a secret all this time and said I knew everything about how she cheated on Dad with Ellen's dad. Out of nowhere, Mom roared, "How dare you say that?" I yelled back, "That's what Ellen overheard." Then they told me that the conversation Ellen had overheard had nothing to do with us being siblings. He had even cleared up that confusion with Ellen years ago. Her dad said, "Your father used to work in my factory when the accident happened. I felt responsible for you just because of that." Then he handed me a card and said, "You're invited to Ellen's and Brian's wedding." Then he was gone. An hour later, I was outside Ellen and Brian's house. To my surprise, I heard screaming inside. Brian was yelling at Ellen. I called 911 and then I banged on the door until he opened it. Behind him, I saw Ellen. She was sobbing. I pushed inside, ran over to her and said, "I'm so sorry, Ellen, for everything." After a minute, she pushed me away. Brian rushed in too. He yelled at her to throw me out or else. I demanded to know why he was speaking to her like that. The police arrived and Brian stopped screaming. Immediately, he started telling Ellen how much he loved her, how he couldn't live without her. The police asked Ellen if she wanted to press charges. She said no. I told her she was crazy. I told her that marrying him was going to be a mistake. She told me to get out of her house. It hurt like hell, but I knew that Ellen wasn't going to listen to a single thing I said after all that had happened. After that, I knew I had to stop their marriage no matter what happened. So I started going to all the places I knew Ellen would be and tried to talk to her. At first, she refused to accept me. One day, I decided to surprise her just like she had once many years ago. I baked a batch of brownies and rang her doorbell, but no one answered. The next day, I went again, and still no answer. Disappointed, I decided to try one last time. The door was opened by Ellen's mom. She told me Ellen and Brian had decided to move upstate and marry there. She said, "It's a private event for close friends and family only. You're not invited." I left and tried to look for Ellen everywhere. I still hadn't told her the truth. I hadn't told her how much I loved her. Years passed and I couldn't find any trace of Ellen. One day, my mom said to me, "It's time you get married, Lucy. You're a girl. You've got to settle down soon. Why don't you date someone?" I told her I wasn't interested, but that night, I got a call from Mom telling me she was waiting for me at a restaurant. She gave me a table number and said, "It's serious, hurry!" But when I got there, I saw a guy sitting at the table. He called my name. Oh no. Reluctantly, I walked over to him and told him I wasn't interested. I said my mom had set this up, but he held my hand and said, "Don't you remember me, Lucy?" He told me his name was Alex. I didn't, and he said he had been in my college. He said, "I love you, Lucy. I always have." Then he begged me to stay. I felt sorry for him. Before I knew it, Alex was coming around to my place and calling me his girlfriend. Mom was thrilled. A few months later, on my birthday, Alex threw me a huge party and he asked me to marry him. Before I could respond, though, the doorbell rang and the police walked in. They arrested me, saying Ellen had claimed I was involved in stealing millions of dollars from her dad's business. I said, I haven't even heard from her in years. How could I? But they refused to listen. The next day, I saw her again. Even after all these years, my heart jumped at the sight of her. Clearly, though, I wasn't the only one who thought that. Alex jumped up as soon as he saw Ellen. She said, "Why won't you leave me alone? I don't even know what I did to deserve your hate." I wanted to clear up the confusion, but I knew now was not the time. Instead, I said I didn't know why she thought I would steal her money. Just then, Brian appeared and yelled, "Don't try to pretend you're innocent!" He accused me of trying to ruin Ellen's life. Ellen agreed. Then she left, saying, "I hope I never see you again, Lucy." I was still very confused about everything, so I called Ellen's dad. He said he had no idea what Ellen and Brian were talking about. The next day, he came to visit and got them to let me go. I asked him what was happening, and he said the person behind the stolen money was Brian. Turns out, he'd been transferring large sums of money to offshore accounts under my name. By the end of the month, Brian was arrested, and Ellen finally filed for divorce. She moved back in with her parents just a few blocks away. Slowly, we became friends again, and Alex encouraged it. "She's a great person. I'm sure you'll be close friends again," he said. The problem was, I still hadn't figured out how to tell Alex I wasn't going to marry him. Then one day, I decided to surprise Ellen with a visit. When I got there, I was stunned to see Alex's car already parked outside. I snuck in and found Ellen screaming at him. "Get out of here! How could you even think I would like my best friend's fiance?" I rushed inside and they both fell silent. But I'd already heard enough. I started yelling at Alex and kicked him out. Then I turned to Ellen and said, "I've had enough of this." After 10 years, I finally told Ellen the truth. "I loved you. I always loved you. I got mad when I saw you kissing Brian. Then that stupid counselor said we were sisters, and I loved you. I didn't know what to do." For a while, she stayed silent, and I knew what her silence meant. I got up to leave when she called me, and now, she asked. I said, "I will always love you, Elle." Suddenly, Ellen ran over and hugged me, saying, "Me too, Luce. I've always loved you."